Okay, so welcome back to the channel. This is Tackle King fishing website. Today I'm down at Monkey Island in Newport, and it's on the River Usk tidal river. I've not fished here before. I did do a quick recce video earlier on, but this is my first time fishing. It's the end of February. There's quite a strong cold wind. It is very cold out. There's forecast to be one of these east blasts from the east on its way, and it definitely feels like it. There's something in the air, a little bit damp, very cold, strong winds, and occasional speck of rain. So I'm expecting the weather to turn bad later on. We're an hour before high tide. It's not such a high tide today, it's 9.8 metres. So it's not as high as some of the big spring tides we've had this week. We've been over 13 metres. This is just 9.8. I'm right at the end of Monkey Island, mainly because of accessibility. There's quite a lot of spaces down here that you can fish from, but I've got my e-bike with me. Now, if I had a normal cycle, it wouldn't be a problem carrying it down to anywhere along the bank. But e-bikes are a lot heavier than normal bikes. Mine is a cheap e-bike, so it's a steel frame, not a aluminium or magnesium frame. And with the motor and the battery and everything else, it weighs about 22 kilos. So that's quite a lot to hand haul over banks. So I'm right at the end, not too far from the footpath. It's still was a struggle coming down, but we are down. Hopefully it won't be too bad taking the bike back up onto the path. Well, I'm just fishing a one rod today, mainly because of the weather, and it's the first time I've fished here, so I'm not sure how it goes. I've got quite a big drop down onto mud flats and then the river. It's not too bad a cast, and that those mud flats will get covered as the tide comes in. Bait wise, I went down the coast yesterday and did a bit of foraging, and I've got quite a lot of mussels. So my main bait today is going to be fresh raw mussels on the end. See how that goes. I've not used mussels down on the Usk before. It may work, it may not. But I've also got some artificial sandworm and also some fresh prawns if needed. So I've got a reasonable selection of baits. I've got two hooks out at the moment, fishing on mussels. So let's just see how that goes as our first cast on Monkey Island on the River Usk in Newport. So let's take a quick look at where we are. That's where the footpath is. Bit of a scramble to get the bike down, but it wasn't too bad. As you can see, there's quite a long river bank up to the bridge, so there's places for maybe half a dozen anglers to come in. That's the Southern Orbital Bridge. As I say, we're about an hour before high tide, and we've got a bit of a mud down there, but most of that will be covered as the tide comes in. I'm actually on the junction of the main River Usk and the Lliswerry Pill, so that goes in there. That water's a bit stiller than the main river. I'm not sure what the currents are like down here. What I have is a 4-ounce gripper weight, which is the maximum weight I can use with the rod I've got. So we'll see how well that holds the bottom. It is pretty muddy underfoot. As I say, we've had some big tides the last week or so, and those big tides will come right up over the bank here and right up to the edge, and so it is very muddy underfoot, but it's not too bad. I did come up here earlier when the tide was a lot further out and just did a quick walk along the bank to have a look at the bed of the river, and it looks pretty clean. Doesn't look as though there's too much to snag up down here on Monkey Island. We'll see what happens as the session progresses, but I think it's going to be quite a nice clean session with no snags. Let's just hope we get a fish, that's all. It's the end of February, and it's really not until mid-March that we start to get that spring session come in with maybe the occasional bass and a few more species. End of February, beginning of March, always very quiet, both in numbers of fish and also the range of species available. I mean, it's really just maybe some codling, maybe a flounder or two, possibly an eel, a conger eel. But we'll wait and see what happens. Well, my weight seems to be holding the bottom quite well. There doesn't seem to be much in the way of a rip current today. I'm not sure if that's the location. I don't think it is. I think it's because we've got such a low tide. It's 9.8. So while it's not very, very low, it's not those big high tides where the current really comes in. Holding the bottom on a 4-ounce gripper weight, so I'm quite happy with that. Okay, you can get a much better look at those platforms that we fished off the other day and did a quick short. Those are the two platforms on the River Walkway, which are really good places, especially if you're in a wheelchair or mobility scooter. Good solid base to fish from. That's the first one, and that's the slightly larger one. Those are the flats along East Dock Road, and it's not too far from the centre. Nice cycle down in 5 minutes from where I live, and it's quite a nice little location to fish off. But as you can see, probably best done on the bigger tides rather than the lower tides. Okay, that was a fairly straightforward retrieval, but what I think I might do after this cast is maybe just swap over my hooks rig to a long shank hook. At the moment I've got circles on and I'm just piercing the muscles and not holding on very well. So I might get the long shank hooks out, and then when I put the muscles on, I can get the cotton out and tie them out and give them a much better fit to the hook. I mean, I lost half the bait there as I cast out. So I might just, I'll reel that in a little bit and swap over my my hooks to the long shanks. I have to admit, one of the best investments I've ever made for my fishing trips is a good quality flask. I used to have cheap flasks, you know, you could buy them for £5, £6, £7, but they never held the heat very well, and they were only rated for about 4 hours or 6 hours at best. And on really cold days, they wouldn't even last that long before you was just sipping lukewarm tea or coffee. There's nothing like a hot cup of coffee on a cold rainy day like today. So I invested quite a lot of money in a really nice outdoors flask that had a 12-hour rating, and 4 or 5 hours into a fishing session it's still piping hot even though it's still a cold day. So a good quality flask has really made it for me. Lukewarm tea and coffee is not ideal. Neither is Luke. Had a bit of movement there. Weren't sure whether it was the a nibble or the wind. I think it's more likely to be the winds, but I'll leave that to rest. But lukewarm soup, lukewarm coffee, it's not great when you mate all day. So it's always worth spending extra money on getting a good quality outdoors flask with at least a 12-hour hot drinks rating. You have to make sure it's hot drinks rating because a lot of them are 12 hours cold drinks rating. So it keeps the drinks cool, but it doesn't keep them warm. So always look out for that 12-hour hot drinks rating. But the wind is beginning to pick up a bit now, and it is causing a little bit of a movement on the rod tip. Okay, so we're about ready to hit the high tide mark. So what do I think of the area? Well, I think it's quite a nice place to come fishing, Monkey Island. I think next time though, I probably won't bring the e-bike because they'll give me the freedom to actually move closer down to the water along the bank, or choose a better location without having to worry about hauling that bike across bits of rubble and stuff like that. It's a nice location, quite peaceful. You can hear a lot of the road traffic, but apart from that, it's not too bad. I probably wouldn't fish here on anything less than a 10.5 metre tide. That's normal tide, not Newport tide levels. Newport people tend to add on 1.8 metres. Probably do the same with the fish as well. So, but this is a real tide, as from the Admiralty. 9.8 today. Probably a little bit low. I could probably get closer to the water by going down the bank a little bit more and leaving the bike sort of exposed and on its own. But I think even then it would probably fish better on a 10.5 and above. Very nice location. It's got a nice ambience about it. A lot less sort of urban-like than being on the platforms over on the bank. Not quite as nice as that stretch of grassland down by the car showroom, which is just around the bend here. But it's nice enough. And you're much further downstream than you are at Shakespeare Park. So you got a much better selection of fish species and hopefully a little bit better chance of catching. But no good at all for people in wheelchairs or people with even a little bit of mobility problems. You'd have to clamber over quite a steep bank with lots of rubble. So you'd have to take care if you come down to the fish here. But it gets a definite thumbs up. It is a nice place to come. Right, the tide's beginning to turn quite a bit now. And I've changed where I was casting. Before I was sort of casting out here into this area where the Pill and River meet. And it seems as though it was quite a little bit of slack water there. There wasn't quite such a current. And my bait held bottom quite well on a 4-ounce gripper rate. But with the tide now coming out, I've decided to change where I'm going to cast. And I'm casting straight out into the river itself. And we seem to have picked up a little bit of a current there. It's not quite holding the bottom on the 4-ounce. But it's not too much of a movement, not too much drifting. I can't go any higher than a 4-ounce gripper. My rod is only rated up to 150 grams. So I'm really on the edge of the rod's capabilities. I think probably you're better off with quite a stronger rod with maybe 300 gram rating and going for maybe 5 or 6 gram weights on these lower tides. Higher tides you'll need a lot heavier, but on this tide 9.8 up to about 10, you should be able to hold bottom on 5 or 6 ounces. But my rod's not rated for that. My rod's rated for 4 ounce. And there's a little bit of drifting, but not much, so I'm quite happy. Just hope it finds a fish. But probably got to be another 6 weeks for that before that happens. One of the benefits now that it's end of February and heading into March is that we get much longer days. So next week, week after, I'm going to be able to start heading off to places like Penarth, Ogmore Bay, maybe make out to Barry Island, somewhere like that, to do some beach fishing. But until then, I might head up next time. I haven't done any fishing on camera yet at St Bride's. I think it was a couple of months ago. Well, God, probably longer than that now. I did a recce of St Bride's. I went up there on the Dial to Ride bus and I did a recce. and it looks quite nice, but I haven't been back fishing yet. So that's something I'm going to head off for. So I haven't been fishing on camera yet. So I'll do a first time fishing on camera at St Bride's, possibly next time. But it's so good to have the days going longer. Looking forward to trying a trip out to Penarth soon. Ogmore Bay is a definite one on my list. Fairly easy to get to from Newport on public transport. Barry Island, Port of Call can be done quite simple on the train and the bus. So there's a few selected places that I'll head out to now that the days are getting longer. Let's just keep an eye on this rod now. Well, we haven't had much of a bite at all today, really. It's the time of year. The water's beginning to drop quite a bit now, so I could move further down the bank to get closer to the water. I think it's about 40-45 minutes after high tide, but that wind is really picking up. It's getting really cold as well. It's a real bracing wind, and we got what looks like snow clouds coming across. So maybe that beast from the east is on the way. I might just give it 15 more minutes where I am and then pack up and go. I've really enjoyed it down here today. I think if the tide had been slightly higher, it would have been nicer. I mean, come March, in a couple of weeks, we're going to start getting the fish coming back into Newport and into the River Usk. So it should be a lot more productive. But it was well worth coming down here today, just to give it a try. I mean, with Coronation Park closed, everywhere really is a good opportunity to take a look and see if fishing can be done. But next time I'll definitely come down, probably walk it, because it's only about maybe 20-25 minutes walk, rather than bring the bike. And that's going to allow me to sort of head up the bank a bit more and find a more suitable location for fishing without having to worry about hauling the bike across some rough ground. But yeah, definite thumbs up. I'll give this a good score for fishing locations in Newport. That's Monkey Island. You get a little bit of traffic noise, but that's about all. Ample parking around, but if you park, you're still going to have maybe a 15-minute walk down to a longer footpath down to the river where you can get to the access to the riverbank. But a good place. So I'm just going to give this 15 more minutes. If I land a fish, I'll switch the camera on. But until then, tight lines until next time. And I'm not sure where next time's going to be, but it might be down St Bride's. So that's the one to look out for next. So thanks for watching.